Leadership Education Mentoring Institute presents the Socialization Question Reconsidered: Homeschool Socialization, Community, and Mentorship by Tiffany Earl and Heidi Christianson. But what about socialization? If you're considering homeschooling or already homeschooling, you've heard this question. Maybe you've asked yourself, lying awake at night, wondering if you're somehow depriving your children of essential social development. Homeschool socialization is one of the most common concerns raised about alternative education, and it deserves a thoughtful answer, not a defensive one. Because here's the thing, the question isn't wrong. Humans are social beings. Children need to learn how to navigate relationships, handle conflict, work with others, and find their place in the community. The question isn't whether socialization matters. It's where and how healthy social development actually happens. What we've discovered over years of working with homeschooling families is this: children in strong educational communities don't have less socialization. They have better socialization. They're learning from people qualified to teach them, practicing in environments where guidance is available, forming friendships based on shared purpose, and experiencing the multi-age relationships that reflect real life. But not all communities are created equal, and this is where understanding what makes an educational community truly healthy becomes critical. Let's explore what effective socialization actually looks like, why community is essential, not optional, and what sets certain educational communities apart. How homeschool socialization works in the early years. Nicolene Peck, author of Parenting a House United, asks parents to consider something important. If you look at your children and consider their three primary sources for learning social behavior, family, same-age peers, or media, which one do you pick? When framed this way, the answer becomes obvious. Same-age peers, no matter how well-intentioned, lack the life experience and wisdom to teach social skills effectively. They're learning too. Media certainly can't provide the nuanced guidance children need for navigating real relationships. This is why Peck reframes how we think about peer interactions for younger children. What are friends for? They are for practice. They are to practice our social skills. For younger children, family teaches the foundational skills: how to listen, disagree respectfully, work through conflict, serve others, show empathy, take turns, and share space. These aren't skills children naturally acquire from playing with age mates. They're skills that must be taught, modeled, and practiced under guidance. Community provides the laboratory where children practice those skills in safe, supported environments. In healthy communities, children interact with peers while adults remain present and engaged, not hovering, but available to guide, redirect, and coach when needed. This is radically different from dropping children into peer groups and hoping they'll figure things out on their own. It's intentional social development, not accidental. Homeschooling teens: why community and mentors matter more than ever. Something shifts as children enter adolescence, and this is where community moves from helpful to absolutely critical. Teens are supposed to start pulling away from their parents. It's not rebellion, it's growth. They're beginning the essential work of becoming their own person, forming their own convictions, and discovering who they are separate from their family identity. This is healthy. This is necessary. This is exactly what should happen. What's not healthy is teens pulling away into a vacuum, or worse, pulling away into peer groups who are just as lost and confused as they are, with no adult guidance beyond teachers managing classroom behavior. Why homeschool teens need trusted adult mentors. We've watched this play out hundreds of times. A 14-year-old who used to listen eagerly to her parents starts resisting everything they say. Not because the advice is bad, but because it comes from mom and dad. Then that same teen sits down with another adult in the community, someone she respects, someone who is not her parent. And suddenly, she's all ears. She asks questions. She seeks advice. She actually listens. The teen can receive it without the complicated dynamics of the parent-child relationship getting in the way. This isn't a failure of parenting. This is how adolescence works. Teens need to hear wisdom from multiple trusted adults. They need to see that the principles their parents have been teaching aren't just family rules. They're wisdom that other respected adults also embody and live by. In healthy communities, teens find these mentors naturally. These mentors could be the father who teaches history and asks thoughtful questions, or the mother who leads service projects and models servant leadership. The young adult mentor who's just a few years ahead and can say, I struggled with that too. Here's what helped. Without community, parents are left trying to be everything for their teens, the only voice of wisdom, the only model of adulthood, the only perspective on life's big questions. That's an impossible burden, and it's not how humans are designed to grow. Do homeschooled kids have friends? Rethinking peer relationships. Teens also desperately need peers, but not just any peers. They need peers who are pursuing something meaningful together. Think about typical teenage social groups. What are they primarily focused on? Often it's entertainment, social status, fitting in, and managing drama. These aren't bad things in themselves, but when they become the primary focus of peer relationships, they create a shallow foundation for identity formation. Now, contrast that with teens in strong educational communities. What are they pursuing together? They're engaging with challenging ideas, working on projects that matter, discussing books that make them think, serving their communities in meaningful ways, developing real skills, and teaching younger students. The entire quality of conversation changes. Instead of gossip and social positioning becoming the main currency of relationships, these teens are building friendships around shared purpose and intellectual engagement. They're still teens. They still laugh and joke around and share inside jokes and navigate crushes and conflicts. But the foundation of their friendships run deeper. They're bonded not just by shared age and proximity, but by shared pursuits and values. These are the kinds of peer relationships that last, that strengthen character, that support healthy development rather than dragging it down. Multi-age socialization, how homeschool communities reflect real life. Something beautiful happens in healthy communities. Age segregation disappears. A 16-year-old teaching Shakespeare to 12-year-olds develops patience, clarity of thought, and genuine leadership skills. An 11-year-old watching 17-year-olds lead a seminar sees a picture of who she might become. A parent watching her shy 14-year-old successfully mentor younger students sees her child in a completely new light. Heidi's community accidentally discovered the power of multi-age dynamics when they split by age for a year. Older students, no longer role models for younger children, became more casual. Younger students lacked aspirational examples. When they reunited, both groups immediately elevated their behavior. As one mother noted, "My teenager needed to be needed." Teens learn that real community includes people in different life stages, and that's richer, more interesting, and more reflective of real life than age-segregated groups. In most institutional settings, teens only interact with peers their own age and with adult authority figures. In healthy communities, they experience the full spectrum: younger children who look up to them, peers who challenge and support them, young adults just ahead of them, and mature adults who offer wisdom. This multi-age dynamic teaches teens something crucial. They have something valuable to offer to younger students, while they still have much to learn from older mentors. It's simultaneously humbling and empowering. When community changes everything. One family story. Heidi's oldest son started his educational journey like millions of other children in a traditional classroom. Kindergarten went fine, but first grade, cracks began to appear. He was bored. The pace was too slow. The content unchallenging. Worse, he wasn't fitting in with his peers. When a bright, restless child can't find his place, behavior problems follow. He started acting out. Some of what he did crossed lines, inappropriate things he picked up from other students, behaviors that weren't reflective of who he was at home or the values Heidi and her husband were trying to instill in him. Heidi decided to pull him out and homeschool. That second grade year, she could finally work on his level, making learning engaging instead of tedious. But just as importantly, she could teach him the social skills he actually needed: how to interact appropriately, handle frustration, and be a good friend and brother. He practiced these skills with his brothers and at their homeschool co-op, in an environment where adults were present and engaged. Slowly, he found his footing. Then, the family moved out of state. For 2 years, Heidi searched for the right community. Her son was 12 now, entering those critical teen years. And without community, something had shifted. He'd become introverted, not in the healthy, reflective way, but in a self-protective way. He stopped sharing his ideas, stopped putting himself out there. He had genius inside him. Finally found a new community starting up, one built around leadership education principles. She hoped it might help, but she had no idea how transformational it would be. Her son signed up for a Shakespeare class that first year. He loved reading, so he agreed to participate. But act in the play? Absolutely not. He'd handle props and lighting, stay safely behind the scenes. The mentors in this community didn't push, they didn't force, they did something more powerful. They invested. They got to know him. They asked him thoughtful questions about the text. They noticed what lit him up. They earned his trust. Slowly, he started to open up. Maybe, he thought, he could take a small part. Nothing major. By the second semester, he was cast in 2 major roles in the final production. This wasn't just about Shakespeare. It was about a young man finding himself again. The mentors who took time to draw him out, who saw past his self-protective shell to the person underneath. The positive peer group who welcomed him and were pursuing something meaningful together rather than just managing social hierarchies. The multi-age environment where he wasn't competing with peers, but learning alongside them. By the time he went to college, he'd been in numerous plays. He'd found his voice, and perhaps most tellingly, he'd started mentoring classes himself, paying forward what those early mentors had given him. That's what the right community can do. Not just provide socialization, but provide the exact environment a young person needs to become who they're meant to be. Is homeschooling bad for socialization? The real answer. This transformation didn't happen because of curriculum or academic rigor alone. It happened because of community. The right kind of community with trusted adults, positive peer relationships built around a shared purpose, and a culture that drew out potential rather than suppressing it. So, when someone asks, what about socialization? Here's the real answer. Children in strong educational communities don't have less socialization. They have better socialization. They're learning from people qualified to teach them, practicing in environments where guidance is available, forming friendships based on shared purpose, and experiencing the multi-age relationships that reflect real life. That's what community makes possible. Making this real for your family. If you've listened this far, you're probably asking yourself, so what do I do with this information? Maybe you're realizing your current situation isn't providing the kind of socialization we've described. Maybe you're wondering if you need to uproot your entire life to find the right community. Maybe you're in a rural area thinking, this sounds great, but there's nothing like this near me. What to look for in a healthy educational community. Not every homeschool co-op or group provides what we've been describing. Here's what distinguishes truly healthy educational communities. Mentors, not just teachers. Adults who invest in relationship with students, who ask questions and draw out potential, not just deliver content. Multi-age interaction. Older students teaching or mentoring younger students watching older role models, everyone learning that community includes different life stages. Shared purpose beyond socializing. Groups that gather around meaningful pursuits, engaging with great ideas, developing real skills, serving others, and creating something worthwhile together. Parent involvement and alignment. Parents who are present, engaged, and share core values about how children develop and what education should accomplish. Focus on character alongside academics. Communities that recognize that developing the person is just as important as developing the mind. First steps when you don't have a community yet. If you're searching for a community, look beyond the closest homeschool co-op. Ask around. Search online for groups in your region that emphasize mentorship, classics, and leadership development. Visit different groups. Watch how adults interact with teens. Notice what students are actually talking about with each other. If nothing exists near you, you might need to build it. Start small. Even 2 or 3 families committed to the same vision can create a powerful community. Focus first on finding alignment with other parents, then build from there. While you're building or searching, double down on family culture. Your home is the foundation. Seek out individual mentors, a coach, a music teacher, a family friend who can speak into your teen's life, and be intentional about the peer interactions your children do have. The deeper question this raises. Here's what we haven't fully addressed yet. Why do leadership education communities consistently create the kind of socialization environment we've described? It's not accidental. It's not just that families happen to be nice people, though they usually are. It's because leadership education itself, the philosophy, the approach, the entire framework, shapes how communities function and how people interact. The mentorship model isn't an add-on. It's central to how leadership education works. The multi-age dynamics emerge naturally from the developmental phases. The focus on character development creates the culture. The emphasis on great ideas and meaningful work gives students something substantial to bond over. In other words, the socialization benefits we've described aren't separate from leadership education, they flow directly from it. Which means if you want to create or find this kind of community for your children, understanding leadership education isn't optional, it's essential. Ready to go deeper? The socialization question led us here, to recognizing that the kind of community matters as much as having community at all, and that the communities best equipped to provide healthy social development are those built on a coherent educational philosophy. If you're wondering, what exactly is leadership education and how does it work? How do I implement this in my own home? What does this look like in practice day to day? How do I find or build a leadership education community? We dive deeper into all of these questions on our podcast. Here are 2 episodes that are perfect next steps after reading this guide. You can find links to these podcast episodes in the show notes. Homeschooling Courageously with Nicolene Peck, where the socialization question is covered and much more. The Commonwealth Difference with Leah Hone. A Commonwealth school is a common form leadership education communities take. Leah shares her family's experience with it. You've already taken the first step by thinking carefully about socialization. These episodes will help you understand the educational approach that makes this kind of community possible and give you practical strategies you can start implementing right away. For more information, the Lemmy podcast, Lemmy Works, is available on most podcast platforms, or you can find it at lemiworks.com. Would you like more information? Here are some additional resources to learn more about what we've shared here. Nicolene Peck's book, Parenting a House United, is available on her website, teachingselfgovernment.com, as well as on Amazon. Our books, Developing a Mentor's Heart and The Learning Zone, are available on our website, lemmyhomeschool.com, and Amazon. Our free membership website, lemmy-u.com. Check out our events page where you will find free webinars almost every week of the school year. Also check out our YouTube channel. All links are available in the notes. Tiffany Earl and Heidi Christianson are experienced leadership education mentors who have worked with hundreds of families to implement this approach and build thriving educational communities.